honesty to yourself is so very important. And it showed that in that particular scene. It wasn't just about being sorry and having um being sorry about hurting other people, but also hurting yourself and not being honest with yourself about how you feel. And so then we get to that part. I mean, this is like, I loved it. So now he's free and he's liberated. But now it's the next part, Pleasure Island. Another new temptation where he gets swept away. And remember, he doesn't trust people. And he gets swept away. And both of these times that he's hearing these people, they're saying, I'm an honest person. I'm a trustworthy person. And that was a joke. If someone says they are, they probably aren't. And we know that, right? But this was fun to see it in a movie. But he's sitting there now with these kids, and all these kids are going off to Pleasure Island. Now, Pleasure Island was the island where they could do anything they wanted. So the kids get swept up in the middle of the night. That means they're out. So that means these are delinquent children playing hooky, so on and so forth. They get swept up in the middle of the night and they're getting ready to do whatever they want. Pleasure, right? Roller coasters, it's like an amusement park, all fun. They can destroy things that they want. They can curse, they can drink, they can smoke. Of course, in this movie, they get rid of the tobacco and the beer that was in the original movie and they replace it with root beer. But we get the point. They're literally just guzzling down stuff and just wild and free, destroying property, just causing destruction. And so being chaotic and not having a sense of empathy, compassion, not having a sense of consequence, and they're just out there. But what happens to them? Eventually, you start to notice that these kids are disappearing and they are literally turning into donkeys. And so this is, and meaning they're acting like donkeys, which is also Jack A double S's. And so that's what they turn into. And those donkeys are swept away to become essentially a slave to that behavior. Now they're going to be doing hard labor in salt mines as donkeys. So it talks about that kind of behavior, not being compassionate, seeking destruction, that you can become a slave to that behavior. You can become a slave to it. And so you really do want to what? Have a sense of consciousness, have a conscience. And so Jiminy Cricket, of course, finds him. He finds him and he sticks with him and they get out of the situation. But he started to grow the ears and the tail. All right. Let's see. Pleasure Island was always my favorite part in the book and cartoon. Love the way they did it in that film. Big lessons, yeah. It's really amazing. I'm like, wow. Just thinking about it, how you can really get stuck in a behavior, and you think about people who kind of are like that. They tend to be stuck. They don't seem to know how to get out, because it's like this constant spiral into almost that becoming your master. So yeah, and it's funny that they all end up being slaves in a salt mine. So you actually become a slave to saltiness, to negativity. So that is what happens in that part. So then, as we keep on moving on, he he gets liberated from that situation, but of course he still has the ears and the donkey tail, and he has to find a way out. So now the water is getting involved. Giuseppe, in the meantime, is looking for him, looking for his creation, of course, and they're able to get back him and Jiminy Cricket, but Giuseppe's not there. So now they have to find Giuseppe. They have to search for the father. In their search for the father, they, of course, and so it's funny. This is a children's tale. It's a children's tale. That's why I was like, this movie's great. All the lessons in the search for the father. He goes out to sea in a small boat. So they have to try to find him, and they use the elements, right? You have the sea water now. You have the condor. You have Jiminy Cricket, and and Pinocchio's out there to find him, and it's just this long journey to find him. Um, I forget, there's a part that I'm missing of how he actually he does lose his ears and the tail. He does that, I think, by coming to peace with and accepting. So if anyone can remember this, Alicia, you might be able to remember it. The part where finally he does meet the puppet again, and that he sees that this is one of my favorite parts about this, and this to me is a very important lesson in life. So the puppets had the people who were part of Stromboli's like circus act or the moving act, they want to essentially be liberated. This guy was abusive. He was literally, remember that concept of being stuck in a way of being, and then profiting from someone else's misery, um, and all in the promise that there'd be a star. And these people wanted to create and be themselves, so they finally got free. And as a creative person, that's always been a big concern. Like when you are a creative person, there is a sense of the promise of fame or influencing, that the more you get involved and other people are involved, they can try to imprison you into being a certain way, having a certain image, and not, you're no longer being in control of that. And so that journey of those people is that they liberated themselves so they could actually perform the way they want and be who they want and tell the stories that they want to tell. I mean, as an artist, it was very moving, and it was just a small like plot of the entire movie, but I couldn't ignore it. And so they see each other, and and the puppet comes down, and she sees him, she finds him, and they talk and they hug. And I forget the thing that helps him lose his ears, but that whole thing, you guys can watch it, you can find that part out. But it is really beautiful. It's either courage or honesty. There's some kind of thing that happens where he is becoming, or unselfish. There's something that happens. One of those things happens. So that happens that helps him get back to normal. Anyway, it was just, that part is absolutely beautiful because you are seeing this artistry, this creativity being liberated, and knowing that these artists are now free to do this. Um, Really beautiful scene. Like to me, like the fact that they added that was a beautiful addition. Yeah, and the blue fairy I think comes back to help. I think so too. So as we keep moving forward, they now have to hit the water, right? And find Giuseppe. I mean, just I keep saying Geppetto. So they find Geppetto. The names are interchangeable to me, by the way. The name Giuseppe and Geppetto, I don't know why. So Geppetto, they find Geppetto, and but they get, we all know what happens, right? They get swallowed, not by the whale in this situation, it's called a sea monster. And so they're united, the love is there, all of that is there, but they have to get out of this. And so the elements happen. Once again, magic happens. Remember, Pinocchio is a conjure doll, and it's essentially all these elements are involved. And so this is where I love the magic of it. They light a fire, and that fire of course creates a sneezing like action that propels them out and eventually gets them to safety. So that's a whole thing. You can watch it and everything. But what's more interesting about it to me is that when they all get on land, Geppetto's on the ground. We don't know if he's alive. And that unselfishness shows the most. We already know that Pinocchio's brave, right? He learned all these different skills and all these temptations. He found out how fast his body can move. He found out he could do these amazing things. And so, in all these hard times that he was going through, from being kidnapped, and being forced to perform, from being on the Pleasure Island, and really having to dig deep and find out what was important to him, because that's what he was dealing with on Pleasure Island. He was watching all this stuff happen, and deep down he was like, I don't want to do this. And so he was actually then having that moment of honesty with himself, because he had already gotten there. He already gotten a taste of what it means to be honest with himself. And so he couldn't let that go. And then he had to keep on digging. So Pleasure Island was a time for him to actually really like dig deep, because he was being faced with the opposite. Like, this is what it looks like to behave this way. Who are you? And so, with all of that, that's where his courage and determination comes from, which is how he was able to, of course, and of course he's becoming more intelligent too, which is how he was able to navigate the sea, and how he was able to save them from the monster once they got out, and you figure out how to utilize his body, to facilitate that freedom. But then at that point, after he did everything he could, all he had left is love. And as he's over Geppetto, he finally produces a tear, and that tear, of course, seeps into him, and the life is rejuvenated. But what's amazing about that is now he has experienced courage, love, and being unselfish and compassion. And I guess when I look at all of this, it reminds me of our journey in life, right?